Hey everyone. Was out having to dig a hole today, and this came to mind, and I didn't want to wait till next week to put it out. So, where I am in Vermont, if you remember, Vermont at a certain point in its history, it was underwater. I'm at over 1,000 feet above sea level here, but the land here has a bunch of stones in it. You really can't go down anywhere at all without hitting a stone. In addition to that, I know there's a rock ledge pretty much under the house, which is fantastic for a foundation for a house, but awful if you want to do any kind of hand construction, shall we say, without using a digger, or if you want to do farming. I'm in a farm community here. We've got cows and fields around me filled with corn and things, but it's not a great situation for that. And that got me thinking about a bunch of things in life. I'm going to throw some pop culture references out here, so bear with me. If you go back to the original Star Trek series, and before it got corrupted even within its first season, the goal was that there was enough power, and these replicators could make anything for you, that people could pursue things that they were good at. They weren't forced into roles that they needed to do to pay the bills, right? They never talked about money. Money wasn't a thing anymore. Everybody contributed to the society and did their own thing in their own way, and society really didn't need for much except for creativity, except for adventuresome, except for even art. So it changes the way everybody has to deal with things, right? When you have that kind of freedom. And that made me think, as I was doing this stuff, about how we treat what we term disabled people. And I don't see disabled people as disabled so much as we as a society have failed them in some way. A little while ago, it wasn't that long ago, but Nardelli is doing an absolutely crap job with Microsoft. Microsoft R&D was working on a project that would allow somebody who's blind to, with just the glasses that they had on, to be able to have a menu read to them, right? Not out loud, not anything anybody would notice, self-contained, right? So the person would have dignity. And that is a way of society stepping up to handle what we call a disability. The person doesn't have sight, or the person may respond to situations differently, or the person may not be as mobile as other people. And we have done a really crappy job of keeping up with that. How many buildings do you come across that have stairs also have a way of people getting up the stairs who have problems traversing stairs? I mean, ramps would work for everybody, yet we still have stairs in a lot of places. Now, granted, there's certain places that are difficult to do with a ramp because of the angle, and that's where we have elevators, right? If you go into an office building and you look at the stairs going from floor to floor, they're very steep. That would not make a very viable ramp situation, but we have elevators. So disabled people are people that the majority of society has marginalized for one reason or another. Maybe they can't hear. Maybe they can't see. Maybe they respond to the world differently than some people do. my memory can border on edict at some points. And that's not a cool thing. Certain things you just don't want to remember that you're stuck with. And so every one of us is different. And we try to put the world into a mold, right? We try for homogeneity, which doesn't exist. There is no such thing as normal. There's things within a certain range of distance from other activities and things, but there's nothing that's, quote, normal. It's just what society has decided to live with. And society has decided to live with some very horrific things over the course of our development. And we've got a long, long way to go. But we have to embrace the diversity and get rid of the homogeneity aspect, because that homogeneity leads to death. It leads to decay. Take, for example, there's a particular moth that lived or lives in Great Britain. Okay, same moth has two variants. One was a white variant, and the other was more of a gray variant. The houses being white, the moth would blend right in, right? The moth could go and chill out at the house and not have to worry about predators because they were harder to see, but the gray moths weren't. They stood out. But a coal mine went into this area. And a coal mine is dirty. I don't care what anybody says about clean coal or any of that crap. It is a dirty business. You're breaking apart coal. And when you do, it creates coal dust. And it's got to go somewhere. And in this case, it covered the houses. That meant that the white moths now were the oddity and easy for the birds to pick off. And the gray moths survived better. If you've seen a monarch butterfly, those are those orange and black ones. There's another one that looks an awful lot like it called a viceroy. Now, a monarch butterfly comes from a monarch caterpillar, obviously. You've probably seen little golden and green chrysalis, but they eat milkweed. Milkweed is very toxic to birds. So because they grew up on that milkweed, the monarch butterfly is toxic to birds. The viceroy does not. And the viceroy is very tasty for birds. However, they changed to match the monarch butterfly as a form of protection. They hide within a certain look. And in a lot of ways, our society forces us to fit within a particular look, right? That anything outside that look is something that should be attacked because it's outside of that norm. And there's no reason for it. We weren't born that way. We were born with certain things. Survival instinct being one of them. Trying to judge whether somebody is a threat to us or anything is a threat to us is something that always runs through our minds, because we are not the strongest. We are not the fiercest. We are not the most capable killers on this planet. So we had to band together for protection. And now it seems like, because society has protected itself a little bit too much, perhaps, by wiping out everything that, or most of the things that would threaten it, it's turned that inward. And instead of seeing diversity as a benefit, it sees it as a threat. Certain people are just better at certain things, right? I don't care why But some people are better in cold weather than they are in hot weather. And some people are better in hot weather than they are in cold weather. And they're better than the average person in either of those extremes. It's just something their bodies take for granted, that they can just survive in or tolerate these things better. And that leads me to another thought here, and that is, if you take a look at the people running AI, right? That is a homogeneous idealist's dream. If you look at how AI is created, right, it just fed a bunch of information in, and it goes from there. AI itself, the technical aspect of it, is that words are turned into numbers, right? Because that's what computers deal with. They deal with numbers. They don't deal with words. Even a spoken word is converted into a numeric representation of the waveform of your voice. So if it's just numbers, and which of those numbers most likely meet with other numbers, it's an awful lot like a con man who knows what you want to hear, who knows the sentences that you want to have put together. Part of the AI is a really good search engine, something that can go through and find what it's looking for within a document. A little bit more of that is an inference engine to try to figure out if what it's looking for is within the range of what you asked, right? Maybe you're looking for a particular phrase or a particular word, but maybe there's another word in there that's a little bit more syllables to it, or a little less syllables to what you asked for, that means virtually the same thing. And it can go respond with that based on an inference of what you were asking of it. But that's not the only thing these things are being used for. In addition to that, they're being fed certain information. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the game Pragmata. It's a newer game that came out, and there is a little girl AI that's in there. And we won't get into the reasons why the AI was built that way, but think about this. An AI is a child. If you were raising a child, regardless of how exponential the growth of information is or how quickly it can absorb things, the child would have a parent, a guardian, a guider, somebody giving it guidance, right, to bring it along a particular path. Now, unfortunately, that could be biased, which gets back to what I was just talking about diversity and being a homogeneous outlook on things. But if it's not, if the guiding principle behind it was more open, more accepting, more interested in diversity, then the AI would be more diverse. But remember, how many AIs do we have, right? Maybe a handful? There's a lot more people than there are AIs. And the reason we do as well as we do is because we are talking to each other, and we're bouncing things off of each other, and we're working off of what somebody else said and working on to a different path from what we've discovered, right? AI is not that way. AI is just taken a whole bunch of data and fed into it. And they're trying to make it appear as if it's a general intelligence, make it appear as if what it's putting out is intelligence, when really it's a search engine reconstructing things in the way you want it to put it out. Now, like I said, certain things in AI are absolutely fantastic if you pay attention to certain rules. But going back to the Pragmata beginning that I started here just for a moment, you can see how if an AI is treated as a child, and having it childlike the way it is in Pragmata helps that quite a bit, and have that guidance put on it, have those protections put on it, have some wisdom put on what it's getting, how that could make the AI better. Having multiple AIs all built a little differently that can then communicate with each other and bounce things back and forth, how that would make things better. But the AIs that are out there right now hallucinate. They create things out of whole cloth. Now, unfortunately, there's a portion of the population of people that do that, and they're called con men. Right? They can just generate anything that they want, and sometimes it's right, and sometimes it's complete BS. But if you use an AI, and if you follow the rule of making it tell you the reference when it's getting information, then you can verify whether it actually made things up or not. The time to be the most critical about what AI is telling you is when it agrees with you, right? Because that's the time when most people figure, oh, well, that's what I thought, so okay, good, this agrees with me. Nope. Look up the reference for anything that it agrees to you with. Make it give you specific areas in the reference material that it got. So not just say, oh, well, I found it in the Library of Congress, it's document 5. Nope. Where? Where is it? To me, if an AI is done correctly, it would have a series of filters put around the material coming in. Filter number 1, is what I'm seeing factual or is it opinion? How much of what's coming in is raw fact versus how much of it is opinion? Once I've figured out that part, then I can say, okay, how much of that opinion is biased and which way is it biased to? For example, something like Ground News, right? It talks about bias from different perspectives, and it's the way things are phrased. I mean, the stuff could be completely true, but it's the phrasing of it. It's the feeling that you get when you read it, as opposed to it just being raw fact. And again, getting people to click on YouTube videos or TikToks or grabbing a news story, it's all about the headlines, right? What can I put on that bottom line that's going to make you want to look at this, click on it, take care to go through what is being told to you. But as you're going through that document and you have the references, that can help you go back and double check that that is indeed what you what it says that it is. That there may be some caveats that are in the document that were glazed over by the AI going through. Again, because the AI doesn't have a filter before it gets its stuff to let it know certain things like bias. To know that what's coming to it is through a particular viewpoint. For me, right now, I think the most value that AI can provide for humanity is to help you summarize instruction manuals or long documentation. I think that's very valuable for the AI to do, and it's easy for it to do. Again, looking at the associations of what you put in. Another area that I currently see valuable in AI is another search thing, but again, using more inference to it. And that is when a law is proposed in Congress, right, being able to set the criteria of your situation and then being able to ask an AI based on my situation, which parts of this will impact me? Now, again, you'd have to put out quite a bit of information about your situation, including what your beliefs are, including what's important to you, right? Or you could ask for it directly, which is probably the easiest way to do it than it is to lay out what your beliefs are and things. Honestly, laying out what your beliefs are, where your red lines are, I think is important to anybody to do. Just so you can see it in writing. You can see where your lines are. I know you're going to see a lot of public figures out there, especially politicians, who don't seem to have any red lines at all, right? They may say they do, but they seem to cross them rather easily. But by knowing what's important to you, you could, using AI, if it's built correctly and fed in a document. Again, all the AI needs to have is an inference engine, a way of being able to interpret the document that came in or represent it mathematically internally so that it can come up with a reasonable answer to the question that you're asking it. But you want to know in that document, let's say it's an environmental document, will this help protect monarch butterflies? Is it in there? Now, again, it may or may not be in there directly, but there might be something specific in there that's similar to, such as flight path. Monarch butterflies are, they travel down to Mexico and winter down there. They can't winter in the Northeast. So anything that would impact migration patterns of birds is probably going to affect migration patterns of butterflies. So it would need to understand that as it went through the law. And the reason I find this one of the best uses of AI is the fact that those laws are just massive. And while they're made available to the public, they are not made available in a digestible way to the public. Can you imagine having to read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages? As a democracy, we should be. Quite honestly, we should know what laws are being proposed, because how can we tell our representatives that they're out of touch if they vote for this particular legislation because of X, Y, or Z? We should, as a people, be more involved in the laws that are created, and AI could help with that. Again, AI that has no bias to it, that looks specifically at the pieces that we tell it to, and from your perspective, that gives you all of the reference points that it needs to make sure that when you read that same section, you agree with the AI and it didn't hallucinate. Hallucinations bother me on multiple levels. Having done some machine learning work, I'm used to percentages, right? How confident are you in the response that you're coming back? Hallucination, while it sounds very confident, probably has a score well below what you would expect or accept as a response from somebody. Hey, if I tighten this a little bit more, am I going to break this pipe? Absolutely not. Go ahead and tighten it. If the response on that is the possibility of it being accurate is 5%, you would know not to take that advice and know that, nope, that is probably not a good idea. So you're not presented with that, but you can be if you ask the AI for its thought processes. If it won't give you your thought processes, discard that AI and go on to something else. If you can't get it to tell you an exact area of a document that it got something. Now, bear in mind, it doesn't interpret a document the same way that we do. Yeah, it converts it all over into numbers, and it probably dumps off a lot of words like the, of, and as being trivial. So you may have to hunt for it a little bit, but it should be giving you enough back that you could just throw a text search, throw the document into any text-based reader and do a search to find that particular reference that it's telling you, and then read around it, because they aren't built to interpret the world the way people are. They're built with a shortcut. It's built in a way we have built the world in general, and that is, we have a percentage that we think is acceptable. Maybe it's 70% of the population, maybe it's 80% of the population, that whatever we do applies to. And anything that falls outside of that, be it 20, 30, 5, 10% of the population that falls outside of it, we don't consider to be valuable. Even though that 10% or that 5% could be more valuable than parts of the 70. But that's just the way the world works. Door frames, they're built for a particular quantity of the population, both in height and width, right? Stairs, the way the stairs are structured, same thing. They're built for a particular design. And there's certain things that you just, you have to deal with, right? You can make it a little bit more so that it's like 5% that can't get through it, or something like that, or 5% that have to duck, or 5% that have trouble getting up the stairs. But you got to pay attention to the fact that people with long legs and people with short legs, you've got variability in there. So it makes sense when you're doing mass things to have to do it that way. But when you're talking about an AI, if you're really talking about an assistant AI, that should be more customized to you. Now, I'm not talking about biases and things like that. I'm talking about it understanding what's important to you, so that when you get up in the morning, for example, a true assistant would tell you all the stories that are important to you. And there's certain algorithms and certain things right now that are trying to do that. That's all great. But it shouldn't be that what's important to you is out in the cloud for some company to take advantage of, to give you ads for, et cetera, et cetera. These are small personal things to you. The first thing we need to do is generate the AIs correctly. And then we can work on making them more personal for the home. But to me, in order to make the AI more useful, follows the same path that we've already taken from here. And that is getting rid of homogeneity, allowing the diversity to come in, diversity of opinions, diversity of abilities. And that leads us down into what are people considered to be disabled. And again, it's because somebody made the decision that they fall outside of some imaginary goal that we have, which is crap. The goals that we put around this societal norm, shall we say, deal with things like how much money they can make. What kind of a BS answer is that? About what their humanity is like. How much they can empathize with somebody. How much they can love. Those are not things that we use. They are not things that are easily quantifiable, which is probably why a lot of people don't deal with them. It's too difficult. Right? It's too difficult to have enough humanity that you can take a look at somebody else's humanity and compare it to your own. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. And use that as a guideline. Nope, I can look at their bank account. I don't care how much money you got. That means nothing. I don't care how many things you've got. It also means nothing. What I care about is if somebody who needs something, like a meal, like medical assistance, whether they can get it or not. We as a society have built a trap for ourselves in that we care about things that really don't matter and don't care about things that really do. And that is going to get populated into any AI that we create. And we need to stop and take a look at the way we've created our society and first make that better. And in doing so, we can make the AI and how it's trained better. So let's say you went and made an AI up that had these filters around it, kind of like parents that are protecting it from a particular bias, are letting it see more of the world, but keeping things to factual information, right? Been a lot of things about robots and androids and things like that being strictly factual and not having any nuance to it. And you want to stay away from that as well, the lack of nuance. But in order for us to create proper AI, we need to come up with a basis for it, and then it needs to be personalized to people. And then those AIs should be able to bounce ideas off of each other. Because the only way anything grows is by learning and being exposed to different ideas and different experiences. And we can't do that with AI. We force feed AI a particular set of data and just leave it at that. And what AI really needs to have is to start off basically with what we want it to do, and then worry about making it more general and not have this rapid race to make everything be everything to everybody, or everything to the 5% who like a homogeneous world. So if we bypass that homogeneity aspect of it, right, the AI needs to have a goal in mind. So let's take, for example, interpreting the laws that are going through Congress. Those laws are heavily littered with legal terminology. So the AI would need to know the meaning of those legal terms in order to tell if what you're asking it falls within what it's reading or not. Well, what it's quote unquote reading. If you're going to do that, that is a specific task for an AI. The AI needs to have some basic abilities. That is to infer from what you've said a range of possible responses. It needs to be able to ingest the document that you want it to run the inference against. And it needs to be able to understand the terminology used both by you and by the document to see where the overlap occurs. And I think that is a viable beginning for an AI, and the rest of the stuff should just go away for now until we can get those basic things done and go from there. And from what I see from the AI is even those basic things it can hallucinate in, I've seen it when I've done searches, and it's ridiculous that that occurs. But again, going back to the beginning of where we started here, we'll work our way back. An AI should have a specific task and be built out the way a child is created, how its consciousness expands, how its knowledge expands, how it can achieve wisdom in its time. An AI can achieve it faster, but there is some ability or some reason to have it slow down a little bit more, to take a little bit more time with things. The homogeneity of AI is a problem. And it's a problem on a couple of facets here, because if you think about it, when you're trying to make a decision, you're kind of can be of two minds or three minds or four minds. You might have a friend that you remember who you know wouldn't be happy with this. Having that disparity within yourself to help you make better decisions is something completely out of the realm of AI right now. It's a single thing. Again, that homogeneity that the people who are creating AI want to see in the world is what they're enforcing on the AI. And again, it comes down to, what do you consider to be outside? I use the what I call disabled people because it's a term of in use, but I don't really see people as that. I see them more as being different, and we're all different, and some of us are, myself included, far more different in some aspects than other people. And we need to address that, and we need to embrace that, and we need to expand our society to include everyone and not just what a person or a group of people is determined by, let's say, a government to be acceptable. And we've seen that throughout history, with one government or another thinking that one group or another group should be dominant, should survive even, while they wipe out the other group. And we've seen that in a couple of places recently. And this is 2026. You would think we would have evolved a little bit beyond that at this point. But I want to thank everybody for listening to this rambling rant this time. I know I've gone a little longer than normal, but I just, as I was out there and looking at the ground that's here, right, I've got the moisture for a lot of different kinds of crops, but I don't have the soil for it. And I have the soil for great foundations. I have the soil for making stone walls, which out here in a rural area, that's how they used to demark the property, by making a low pile of stones that was the property line. And I've got a couple of those sitting on the property, one out by the road, and I've got another one further back in the property where the property had originally been divided up into sections. So it's great for that. Could be great for building with stone. It's not the marble that we have further upstate. It's not the slate that they've got parts of the state here that are used for roofs and things like that. But the ground has a purpose. And if everybody in society was able to work to what is they're best at, what gives them joy every day, and not what just gives them a paycheck every day, I think we'd be better off. But the question is, how do we get there? How do we free up everybody to the extent that there are no, shall we say, distasteful jobs, that things are just handled better, and that people are free to be a little bit more I guess just freer to be more them. freer to be their true selves, to do what not only makes them happy, but makes everybody else better off as well. I mean, how many times have you seen those videos of street performers, right? They're out there, there's an impromptu concert, or there's somebody just playing a piano someplace, or there's a young woman that I ran across who just goes out and does things playing the violin out on the street, and people stop, and it makes them happy for a little while. And if we could all get to that point where what we do not only makes us happy, but makes others happy as well, and not have to worry about where the next meal is going to come from, having a roof over our head, being able to support a family, I think we'll be in a better place. So again, thank you guys for listening to this long ramble. I know it was super long this time, but I'll talk to you next time.